Snow had fallen through the night like a quiet blessing over the wide Montana plains, leaving the world washed in silver blue light as dawn crawled over the horizon. But for rancher Cole Maddox, the peaceful morning shattered the moment he stepped out of his cabin and heard the sound, soft, trembling, too small to belong anywhere in the world except inside a mother's arms. He frowned, boots crunching through the frost as he followed the thin cry toward the barn he'd built with his father years ago, the same barn he swore he'd never let fall apart, not even after losing everyone who once helped raise its walls. And when he slid the heavy wooden door open, a cold gust swept out, carrying with it a sound that made his heart drop to his boots, a baby's cry, high, desperate, new. His breath caught as he scanned the shadows between stacks of hay and stalled horses until his eyes froze on something that didn't belong, something small, wrapped in a threadbare pink blanket, lying in a basket. Like someone had placed her there with trembling hands and a breaking heart. And as Cole stepped closer, his lungs tightening, he saw the tiny fist peeking from the blanket, the soft cheek reddened by cold, the little mouth quivering as if begging the world not to abandon her. And then his gaze fell to the note pinned to the blanket, the ink smudged as if written through tears. Please love her. For a long second he couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe the universe had delivered something so fragile and so life-altering into his barn on Christmas morning, the one day he'd planned to spend alone, convincing himself he didn't need the warmth of family after years of pushing people away. But the baby's cry pierced the quiet, and before he knew it, Cole scooped her into his arms, feeling a warmth spread through him so sharp it almost hurt, a feeling he'd forgotten he was capable of, a fierce, protective instinct that made him look toward the road, wondering who had left her. Why they would abandon something so perfect, why they trusted him, a solitary rancher with calloused hands and a past he didn't talk about. He took her inside his cabin, lighting the fire with trembling fingers, warming milk, wrapping her in his old flannel shirt, whispering to her without even realizing it, asking her who she was, where she came from, promising her she wouldn't be cold anymore. And when the baby calmed, eyes fluttering as if she sensed safety for the first time in hours, Cole felt something crack open inside him, something long sealed by grief. And for the rest of the morning he moved mechanically, calling the sheriff, giving statements, pacing the floor as he waited for answers, his rugged face softening each time he looked at the tiny stranger sleeping in his arms. But that peace shattered again when Sheriff Daniels told him nearby tire tracks showed the mother had left in a hurry, possibly in danger, possibly watching from somewhere, possibly never returning, and the sheriff suggested temporary foster placement until the investigation finished. But the moment Cole heard those words his chest seized with a protectiveness that surprised even him. He didn't want her to go, not from his arms, not from his home, not from the barn where she'd been left like a fragile Christmas blessing meant only for him. And that night, long after the sheriff left, Cole sat beside the fire holding the baby, staring at the note again, wondering who had written it, wondering why the words felt like a plea meant specifically for his heart. And before he could understand what was happening, he whispered to the sleeping infant that he wasn't letting her go, that he would fight for her, that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas morning wasn't a burden dropped in his doorway, but a second chance at the family he once thought he'd lost forever. Viewers, if you're still reading this moment, make sure to subscribe to the channel because Chapter 2 will break your heart and repair it all over again with the truth behind the note, the mother's identity, and the destiny that ties this baby to the rancher's lonely soul. Chapter 2. 3 days had passed since Christmas morning, yet Cole Maddox still woke every few hours to check the small wooden crib he'd crafted from old barn planks just for her, the baby he now called Hope because that was what she brought into his life. Hope he never asked for but couldn't turn away from. Her tiny breath soothed the cabin with a peace he hadn't known since before tragedy carved its name into his life. And though he was a man who'd spent years talking only to horses and fences, he found himself humming lullabies he didn't remember learning, pacing the kitchen while feeding her, reading the note over and over as if the ink would suddenly reveal more than those 3 desperate words, please love her. Every day Sheriff Daniels checked in with updates, and every day the news was the same, no trace of the mother, no witness, only cold wind sweeping across the ranch roads and tire tracks half buried by snow. But Cole couldn't shake the feeling someone was out there watching, torn between wanting her child safe and needing her child loved. And late one night, long after Hope had fallen asleep, the sound of a truck engine rolled through the quiet valley, cutting into the dark. Cole set Hope gently in the crib and stepped onto the porch, his breath fogging in the cold, his hand gripping the rifle he didn't want to use. But when a woman stumbled into the lantern's glow, collapsing at the bottom step, the rifle fell from his fingers and clattered to the boards below. She was pale, shaking, half frozen, her hair tangled with snow, her breath shallow like a bird's final flutter, and Cole rushed down the steps, catching her before she hit the ground fully, his heart beating hard as he carried her inside, laid her near the fire, and draped blankets over her trembling form, until she whispered with cracked lips, my baby. Is she safe? Everything inside him froze. This was her the mother who had left hope in his barn. But fear clung to her eyes, not the kind born from abandonment but from running, from danger, from someone who wanted to take her baby, from a past she refused to let consume her daughter. As she warmed by the fire, she told him everything: how an abusive partner had threatened Hope's life, how she had escaped into the storm, how she left Hope in the safest place she could find, his barn, because word had spread across the county that Cole Maddox was a man who loved fiercely, a man who once saved a neighbor's children in a blizzard even when he was drowning in his own grief, a man who carried heartbreak but still chose kindness, and she had gambled her daughter's survival on that rumor. Cole listened, anger boiling in him at the nightmare she'd endured, fury rising like fire, and when she whispered that her abuser was coming for her, his entire body stiffened with a protectiveness stronger than anything he'd felt before. That moment, headlights cut across the cabin walls, harsh and wrong, and Cole moved instantly, securing the doors, tucking Hope safely into her mother's trembling arms, telling them both he wouldn't let anyone hurt them. The man who burst in wasn't expecting a rancher with a will forged in grief and years of standing alone against storms. Cole defended them with everything inside him, and by the time Sheriff Daniels arrived, the threat was over, the danger gone, and the woman, Lena, sobbed with relief as she held her child. But what happened next shook Cole. More than any danger, Lena insisted he keep Hope until she could rebuild her life, because she saw how the baby conned in his arms, how Hope's tiny fingers curled around his flannel shirt as if claiming it as home, how Cole looked at her with a love deeper than biology, deeper than blood, a love born from fate and a Christmas morning miracle. Days later, with official papers signed and Lena recovering safely under protection, Cole held Hope on the porch as the winter sun set in gold and rose. And he realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a burden, this was a blessing destined to rewrite both their lives, a second chance born in the quiet dawn of Christmas. And as Hope slept against his chest, Cole whispered that he loved her, that she would never be abandoned again, that their story, crafted from heartbreak, courage, and the power of chosen family, would inspire anyone who ever believed miracles only belonged in fairy tales. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel because more powerful, emotional stories like this are on the way, stories that remind us all that love finds us in the most unexpected moments, even in a barn on Christmas morning.